Very good. Okay, thank you, Anna. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jan, for the nice introduction of Easy Notes. I won't dwell more about who we are and what we do. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity of moderating this panel. What the idea? The idea is that we'll spend the whole day talking about the future with various techniques, approaches, surveys. We'll try to pick your brains as much as we can. And we thought it would be a good idea to start by eliciting some inspirational nuggets from a high-level panel of experts. I don't think I need to introduce the three panelists who are all well known to you, and Jan has also already somehow spent some words about it. We have Terkel Andersson, who of course is a past president of former president.
No, still president.
Of Eurordis.
I hope. Someone changed that?
And very active in a number of associations, notably the Danish Hemophiliacs Association. Robert Madlin, who is former Director General of DG Santé, when it was still called DG Sanko, and now with FIBRA International. And Milan Macek, policy wizard, who among other things has been instrumental and strongly instrumental to the preparation of the council decisions in 2008, 2009. So very pleased to have them here. I will only make a very short introduction to get the ball rolling. I think that as Jan reminded us, foresight is not about predicting the future. Actually, as the saying goes, it's very difficult to make predictions, especially about the future. I don't know, incidentally, this has been attributed to a variety of people. Everybody's very eager to claim the paternity for this saying. But we go along that. And this means that dealing with the future and with the inherent uncertainty that is attached to future calls for combination of modesty on one hand, but imagination on the other. So that's the challenge. And this is why I'd like to start with a question which actually does call for a leap, an imaginative leap for you to address this question. Let's assume that you have the chance of meeting a clairvoyant, somebody who knows about the future. She's been there. She knows what happened in 2040. And of course, you're curious. You're curious. What is it that you're curious about? What would you ask this person if you had 4 to 5 minutes to explain what your main curiosity is concentrating upon? Terkel, shall we start with you?
Is this working? Yes, it is. Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the participants of the working groups. I've been reading carefully the summaries of the different discussions, and I'm really impressed, and it's given me a lot of inspiration also for answering this quite difficult question. Clairvoyant, prophets, oracles. We all know the Greek tragedies, and we know that if you ask, you may get an answer, but you will never be able to change the future. So it's a dangerous avenue to embark on. So anyway, if we play that we could change the future that we would know about, then I would ask, given that we want to leave no one behind, who would in 2040 be those in our rare disease community who would be left behind? Who would be those who would not have access to treatment, who would still struggle with access to diagnosis? Where would we need to really do a special effort to avoid that group of people to be those left behind? That would be my first question to the Oracle.
Okay.
My second one, if I have.
Please, go ahead.
A second one. I'm not sure that with oracles you have 2 questions, but the second one would probably be, how would we actually understand rare diseases by 2040? What would be the the way we see rare diseases? Would we be more individualized in our way of seeing people with rare diseases? Would we get more into the genetics and see it more like a challenge for a more personalized intervention? Or would we still be able to deal with rare diseases as with the groups that we actually consider today?
Thank you very much. Can I ask the same question to you, Robert? We've heard about societal dimensions of the future of rare disease in 2040. You might want to go along or maybe concentrate on more technologically related changes. What would you ask this clairvoyant?
So, thank you very much. So I think that I see this as a question, firstly, about the sort of foresight technique. So by definition, I can only ask a clairvoyant about the known unknowns. So the things that I think are the as today unknown drivers of our future. And I think, therefore, you have to ask questions which shock even yourself. So the first question I would ask is, in 2040, is there any consensus that nobody should be left behind? Are we still in a world of solidarity and collective provision? I think that's a determining factor, and maybe we're going to have to try to answer that even a bit earlier. The second I would ask is, in the state of knowledge, research and innovation in 2040, is it a winning strategy to have a narrow label or a broad label? You know, rare diseases is by design a focused and as a result very effective way of looking at one set of challenges that European society faces. And if I may say so, in the last sort of 15 years I've worked with you, one of the most effective lobbies for good in a way. But in 15, 20 years' time, do we aspire to a world where you still need to educate people about what is the specific category of problems called rare diseases? Or can we look, will the world be one where actually the most effective place to stand to fix our problems in rare diseases is something different?
Thank you, Robert. Milan,
Yeah.
what's your curiosity? I guess something to do with maybe the sustainability of the New Balance.
Well, I mean, I'll be maybe biased, and a lot has been said already before me, but I mean, when you think of future, I always remember what Albert Einstein once said, and he said, you know, don't worry about the future, it's happening already now, or it comes soon, right? That's the first point. And then if you would like to predict the future, what I like, you know, most of us read The Black Swan, Nassim Taleb, and he says, you know, concepts, ideas, and buildings, places of worship, and our approaches to health and our kids and so on, more or less remain the same throughout the centuries because they don't age like we age and we pass, right? But those things which are here with us and have been with us for some time, they're ones to stay. So if we discard the quantum theory that there are parallel worlds and they're sorting out as we speak somewhere else in the universe, I would ask what will happen in 2040? Will we be, all of us, still so interdependent as we are now? Because we need to realize that rare diseases are not happening, I would say, in the vacuum. We are part of a bubble. You know, there are more and more social bubbles and so on. And we are very pleased with the developments. But the bubble can be kind of punched from the outside very quickly if the interdependence, if solidarity, and if all these things just pass, because we will be all taken away by the developments of technology. We will all become kind of interlinked with the machines, and machines, as we all know, don't have emotion unless we develop, I would say, a global self-conscious artificial intelligence. So I think technology is a good servant, but it also can be a bad master. And I would really ask the future, will we remain human? Will we remain interdependent? Will we value our children? And will we value the community? Because a strong community with solidarity will take care also of the marginalized population, because this concept has been throughout the history with us, and with all I would say, religions, with all the social concept. It's here to stay, hopefully, and I hope it will.
Okay, so technology comes into place. I was a bit surprised not to hear about technology from you, Robert, or from you, Turker. Maybe you would like to add something on this?
So I think the interesting thing about technology, and I think it comes out in all three of our answers, is that that's not the answer. You know, the technology will continue to evolve, and maybe there will be some known unknowns in the sense of accessible solutions to the big problems underlying rare diseases. It's highly likely, but that can still be priced out of the market and not available. So I think that it's how we value human life and well-being as communities which will actually determine the outcome. Technology will determine the outcome for some of the time, but we can either mess up by subsidizing research and failing to pay for its results or bring it to market, that's the innovation failure, or we can mess up socially by failing to care enough either to fund the research or to fund the results. And that's a social failure. And I think the social failure is actionable today. I would not be as sure that all of our values stay the same. I think the value of a child's life below 5 in the 19th century, even in Western Europe, is different to the value of that life today. Value not in a monetary sense, but how do we think about it? And so I think that that sort of thing will continue to evolve. So what do I think about technology? We shouldn't focus on technology. And I say that having done quite a lot of technology since I left DG Sanko at the time, but we need to concentrate on what we want. The good news in the age of technological disruption is if we collectively know what we want, an age of disruption is the best time to get it. An age of stability, you know, the Middle Ages, is not a good time to get it. Now is a great time to get change if we know what we want. At the moment, we don't know what we want. Frankly, you know, pharma companies are doing cool research and assuming it will get to market enough to keep the share price up. They're not very savvy in that respect, I think. Payers are pretending it's all very difficult and HTA is you know, cannot rely on real world evidence and so on and so on, just as a delaying factor to accessibility because they know that their budgets can't afford it. You know, these are not serious positions. These are not future-proof positions. So I think it's not about technology, it's about us.
Thank you. Yes, Milan, and maybe also Turkel after that. You want to pick up on this? Yes, go ahead, Milan.
Okay. Then, I mean, it always reminds me what you say of the quote that wars are not won by technology, but by values and commitment. And this is exactly the case because, you know, all of us who've been in research since, let's say, late 80s, scary, but we've seen a lot. There have been many waves in technology, like gene therapy came by, now it's again resurrected, and stem cells and so on. And it's, we have to also be very frank what technology can do and cannot do. And we should look through the fog of, let's say, hype, commercial hype, because that's another thing. We have to be realistic, and we should, you know, do this famous, you know, expectation management with our constituents, with patients, with families in the society. We have to be really honest, and honesty is another key to sustainable future. And if you interlink it with solidarity and interdependence, you know, what is a drug which you can sell to, let's say, provide to few people and you left others behind? It's nonsense. It's also not in the interest of the company. They need to learn how things are working. They should go beyond their short-term profit visions and so on. So we have still a lot to do with honesty, transparency, and interdependence, if I may to say.
Thank you. Turkel.
Technology is happening, progress in science is happening, and we have to address the challenges that we meet in that evolution. And that's what we are trying to do as patient organizations, but still we cannot do it alone. We have to do it in a societal context, and we need to make sure that we get the support of society to meet those challenges. And by that I mean, with the development of gene technology, patient groups will be faced with a number of ethical questions, and we as Europeans should be best in the best position actually to ask those questions and try to deal with them collectively. So that would be my wish, that we could maintain the ethical conscience that we have as Europeans and contribute to the development of science, which is a worldwide thing, by maintaining those standards that we stand for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a second question for you now. Let's come back to 2019. And let's assume, and this probably requires an even bigger leap in imagination, that you can do what you want. There's no constraints. You're the king. And you can direct and orient policies, actions, investment in what you believe to be the most promising, effective direction to improve the situation of rare diseases. What would be your wish? Robert, maybe you can start with this.
So here I have a technological answer, and I may disappoint the audience because it's not rare disease specific. It goes to my point about what's the right platform with which to make progress. I would sort of snap my fingers and invent a machine whereby online, in an easily accessible way for every member of the public. So I'm thinking about my 95-year-old mother-in-law or my 17-year-old autistic nephew. You could look at any question, get access to open, stable data sets and knowable algorithms, which would help you to understand the trade-offs behind your desired answer to the question. So, and the trade-offs would be not just human life, not just human capital, but social capital, natural capital, and the financials, so that I would see the sustainability implications of what I wanted. There are some little models like that. We're doing slightly better today than we did sort of 30 years ago in computerized modeling of the economy, but it's still rather rare to find something that enables you to play the game of being God. I mean, for example, to say, I want only wind power in the United Kingdom, and have the machine say, that's nice, and in 10 years, the impact on output employment is this, and carbon. Do you want to play again?
Yeah.
And iteratively, we find out what's going on. With a machine like that, you would finally be able, I think, to drive empathy back into politics, to demonstrate that no man is an island, that every individual life lost to a rare disease is a life lost, and a social loss, and an economic loss. You might find that even having understood that, we don't have the money to pay, but you would have an empathy machine and a consensus machine. So that would be my dream. And now, of course, if you could build it, we could give it to Eurodis, and then with royalties, you'd be able to fix all the financing problems.
Thank you, Robert. Serkan, you want to take the floor?
Well, I'd like to go back to where we were just 25 years ago. At that time, most people with rare diseases would really struggle to get a diagnosis, if at all available. Now we are there where we can actually shorten the delay to a diagnosis, but we should be able by 2030 and at least 2040 to guarantee that people with rare diseases do not have to wait years and years and go through the ugly misunderstandings around not having a diagnosis. So really to strengthen the pathways towards a diagnosis would be one of the goals I think we should set. And of course, to match that with the efforts needed to make sure that we take stock of the technological evolution, but in good dialogue and integration with a conversation with patients on how to do it, what things to really consider in that evolution. So what I would wish for would be really a concerted and comprehensive action plan taking us towards that brighter future for people with rare diseases, building on the ecosystem that Europe has actually been able to establish at this moment for rare diseases, including a number of elements like the EINs, like the research programs, like Orphanet and the information systems that we have, and actually also the patient organizations and the empowerment of patients that we have seen through the establishment of so many national alliances and EURORDIS. We have seen that develop with the European national plans that we have in Europe. And we have seen that being debated in fora where all the stakeholders were present, including payers, including national authorities. At this point, I have a little bit of a concern that we might be losing out on that kind of coordination, and that we might be also on our way achieving some of our goals in with technology and new structures, that we might be forgetting the input and the ethical thoughts provided by patient involvement. And for that reason, I really miss the fact that we do not anymore have a kind of a committee or a European committee organizing all these stakeholders, and where we can have that dialogue between stakeholders, ensuring that we know where we are going. So, and also giving an impetus to the European Parliament, the Council of Ministers and the Commission to really design ambitious plans for how we get there together, and design policies where we are not only dependent on accidental progress in one or another field, but actually get together to design what kind of future we want.
Milan.
Well, Terkel said it all. I would only add that having all this power, it's a great responsibility. So in this case, I would be asking the clairvoyants, how should I prevent all the negative aspects from the law of unintentional consequences, right? So, and we should really support the ecosystem with the European reference networks all wrapped up with the patient involvement and I would say European-wide policies for a common goal. And I would be very worried, and I would really do my best as a king not to leave within our own community some groups behind, because what we see, a lot of the progress has been done for the few more common rare diseases or where there are the low-hanging fruit. In terms of therapy, I would really invest very much into the ultra-rare, because they are the models for us, treasure exceptions, that's what we say in genetics, they are the models for common diseases. So I would link the rare disease initiatives not only to our own field, but to caring for the elderly, another trend, because there will be more and more people with chronic diseases. And if we are to understand the chronic diseases, we need to understand those exemptions. And we should not leave even the most rarest incident behind, because that can be the black swan which can help us to understand some common diseases and some common mechanisms which elude us in the healthcare for the chronically ill, to which the rare disease community belongs and is one of the forerunners in our quest for care for chronically ill people.
Thank you, Milan. Any additional inputs from maybe, so you're taking notes, so.
No, I always try to take notes, otherwise I don't retain. But the point among my many notes, I mean, I very much like the idea of moving from accidental progress to success by design. In a way, that's the story of our lives, right? But the point I wanted to come back on was this question about how do you ensure good networking, including with the voice of patients and their families, in today's European Union setup, because it's something which in my other sort of pro bono activities I've been discussing with some other patient networks in other disease areas. And I think, so here I'm being a bit the spokesman of my former institution, I think that there's a sense that the current change from disease-specific groups paid to come together physically every 6 or 12 months to the new sort of online platform and community, the opportunities of the new approach are not yet fully analyzed or seized by communities such as this one. And I think there are two opportunities which, as I understand it, my successors in DG Santé are offering. The first is any community can use the Santé platform to build not only its own private conversations, but more public conversations. And therefore, there is an opportunity over that platform to reach the unusual suspects, to find and share with other groups and of activists around European health policy issues that you might have in common. In other words, the opportunity to scale is higher. Now, although I am a sort of technologist, although I'm rather too old for it, I understand that doing it all online is a bit boring and tedious. And so probably you need to recruit different people within your networks to get that sort of exercise going at scale. But the flip side is there's a real opportunity. I mean, if I play a game, how many people in this room live in a member state that joined the European Union since we were already 15? How many from the EU 10 plus 2? Hands up. So that is disproportionately low, disproportionately low. Any meeting in this town on health that I've been to in the last 15 years, you know, we have this huge bias towards the top left-hand corner of the map. Online, it's not like that. And I think we have to really engage with the opportunities of the new platforms to do better in terms of voice, not just between disease areas, but geographically and social economically. And I think that could be a thing where there's something new to do, even today, as opposed to in 10 years' time.
Okay.
And we needed also to make sure that we actually get the best out of the opportunities that we have at hand to really profit from the intelligence, the knowledge available in each and every corner of Europe. And that's the whole idea behind stressing the particular added value of European collaboration on rare diseases, that we can actually do so much more by getting together from all corners of Europe. And we do that in the European reference networks, but we could do better if sufficiently funded. And we could do better if we try to establish a vision of quality care for all, independent of where you're actually living in Europe. I think that was the vision, and Frédéric Ries can correct me, but I think that was the vision behind the Cross-Border Healthcare Directive, to see all of us as European citizens with equal rights to health. And I think one of the criticisms which came out perhaps a little bit in between the lines of the Court of Auditors report, which has already been mentioned, that was in fact that that vision has been a bit pushed behind, and that we are no longer actually stating the solidarity principles and the free movement of citizens to the extent that we did in the past. And we have to get back to that in order really to profit from what European collaboration can actually bring of quality of life to all of us, including rare disease patients.
Milan.
And that's the law of unintentional consequences. We should support free movement within Europe. But I mean, we in genetics and in population genomics, what we see, and it's quite always amazing to us, is that the intra-European migrations are so strong. I mean, like Ukraine, you losing 30% of its population, most of it people in the reproductive age. The Baltics, we have here colleagues from Lithuania. Baltics using all its younger generation or most of its younger generation, Poland and so on. So we need to bear in mind that there will be different demographic scenarios in the EU13 versus the old Europe in Rumsfeldian terms. And we need to account for that because there will be different than political winds associated with it, which in the East will be more, let's say, parochial, more kind of, let's say, confined, because there will be more, let's say, elderly voters to cater to politically, right? So, I mean, it's always, we have to balance this out, these rights with the responsibilities, and one of the responsibilities is not to leave the eastern and central parts and southern parts of Europe, in fact, behind. You're right.
Thanks very much. Okay, I have a last question for you all. Thank you for laying out your dreams and for flagging opportunities. That's a positive thinking, but I mean, let's face it, there are constraints. So my question is, which is the most important, the most urgent barrier or hurdle that should be removed if you really wanted to go in the direction of the dreams that you have laid out for us? I suspect it's not going to be technological, but it might be institutional, it might be governance related, or societal awareness, or funding. If you have to pick one of the barriers that you would consider
I'd hate to just
urgent
pick one. Yeah, you can't just pick one because they are combined. So really, it's. But one of the most important things is probably institutional and structural. You need to have a sustainable ecosystem around rare diseases. And what we see right now is that we have underfunded structures, even structures at threats of being closed down due to lack of funding, often it. And that would be such a pity if we lose the momentum and the opportunities, if we do not really grasp the opportunities that we're getting to, which also implies that we need to find not only funding models, but also see how in the future we will be able to fund care for people with rare diseases within health budgets, which may increase, which will have to increase probably, but where access to new therapies will of course be, as they already are, one of the items of the agenda, which will demand political consideration and action.
Robert.
I mean, there are so many obstacles, aren't there? I mean, so I agree it's very hard to choose. I'll come back to the object for which I was inventing my little machine. I think that the obstacle that we actually lack is a prevailing conversation that talks about the way people, communities, the planet and the economy are inextricably intertwined. And so one day we have a discussion about let's cut taxes or let's put them up. Another day we have a discussion about, elect me, I'm going to get you another scanner in your cottage hospital, which is actually a waste of money. Another day we have a discussion about schools. We really don't have a joined up vision of where we want to go. And I think therefore the problem we have is our salami sliced attention. We are a society without a strategy. The tragedy, of course, is how do you fix that when here we're thinking about one very sort of noble and thick slice of the salami. And I've always said to people, the right way forward in public policy is to get people to talk about the whole sausage, even if you're actually really only wanting to sell them one slice, which is rare diseases. And that you have to have a portfolio investment. So the rare disease community, however small its attention capital, will not win if it only talks about rare diseases, I'm afraid. You need like individuals need a portfolio approach. How much do I invest in the planet? How much do I invest in the health of European policy making? You know, these are real challenges, and I think, if I may say so, civil society organisations are the ones with as yet undeteriorated legitimacy, not funding, but legitimacy, in a world where most of the other actors, rightly one might say, struggling a bit. But then, why are you not getting the funding to back it? Maybe because you're not raising your profile beyond the slice of salami. So I think I'm saying that the proximate obstacle to fixing problems is looking at them in a strategic way. And if that's true, it's a challenge to what all of us spend our time doing all the time. So we have to put back on our t-shirt, you know, I'm a human being living on this planet, as opposed to I do rare diseases, or I used to be in the European Commission.
In this global pressure from all sides, we'll maintain the core values, our values, what we are as Europeans, the solidarity, the principles of the family, the principles of health, the principle of education, and so on, and not be swayed by other concepts which are not natural to us. So getting back to Nassim Taleb, let's support what has made us strong in Europe. Let's support our values, which are here with us for already a couple of thousand years, and let's develop them in the face of rather adverse trends to our culture. And that's part of the game also for rare diseases. They should not be left behind.
Thank you. Unless you have some burning add-ins to this last round, I would be happy to give the floor to you now for questions. We have 8 minutes. So there's one question down there. I don't know if there's a microphone somewhere. I think Anna had one, but she left the room with it.
No, but I'll grab it.
Just a second. You're right. Unless you want to come here.
And values.
Sorry about that. Here's one of those.
Thank you. No, I wanted to ask a clarification to the question. No, thank you. I'll call it. When you said that you would dream of a machine that you ask, you put the question and you get the answer of. To what extent the algorithms that we are creating, you see them as thinking partners of ours or as a replacement? Because the algorithms, by definition, will include the mistakes we make, since we make the algorithms, at least in health. Right. And we are not engineers. So whatever algorithm will include the same mistakes we are doing in our everyday practice. So to what extent your dream thinks of the algorithm or your machine or whatever it is as a thinking partner during a process or as a replacement of what we are doing?
Yeah. So in the innovation space, the big breakthrough is general purpose. You know, can we go to anti-flu vaccines rather than vaccines against seasonal flu, for example? Can we go from adding machines to computers? And so I can answer the question maybe by describing the machine that gave me the idea, which is the British Department of Energy and Climate Change energy mix model. So basically, what it says is there are trade-offs. You can pick the energy mix that you want, and it will tell you the impact on human, social, natural capital. So you go for 100% wind power, it'll cost you so much, you'll reduce carbon to zero, but what happens to jobs and electricity prices? And then you can play again. And the key in these machines, as with algorithms, is iteration. So as a player, it's like a fruit machine. You can play the game again and you learn about the trade-offs. The algorithm itself is open, so nerds can play with it, and it can be improved on the basis of evidence. But I therefore absolutely agree with the implied question, should we allow the algorithms to tell us what to do, or the people writing them? Of course not. The first requirement, therefore, is they should be transparent, they should be validated. And again, in the country I know best, there's a whole chunk of the British Statistical Office now dedicated to criticising members of the government when they promote fake news or lie with statistics. So you need people to keep the algorithms honest, even when people are doing it. But the key to the machine is not that it's telling you the truth, but it's showing you the trade-offs, and that minimizes, it doesn't get away from, it minimizes the sort of narrow focus, unforeseen consequences that usually follow from most political decisions and most political actions, including voting these days in the 21st century.
I just quickly add, it's what we keep discussing. It's about the honesty and transparency. And artificial intelligence is a little bit of a hype. We have to admit that. And we see it in genomics more and more. It should be rather called augmented intelligence, which augments our concepts and helps us with the complexity of biological data. And it needs always a human interface, because if you really put in wrong concepts, if you have a wrong training set, it can, if you sort of fetishize it and you just take it for granted, you can get completely crazy outcomes which are beyond any imagination. So you really need it to take it with a grain of salt, and it's augmented. It's you, your concepts put to the machine, being crunching the big data, but you really should take it with your ethical values, with your approach, because otherwise what happened, like with these training sets for facial recognitions, that they were clearly biased towards men, against women, against minorities, not intentionally, but because that's how the training set is designed. So this is a nice example which we should bear in mind in this regard.
The organizers of this event and of the RD 2030 project have submitted a survey to all of you, and I hope many of you have actually filled in the survey. When I did it, I think most of the answers came out as of pretty high importance, but with very low predictability. So one of the difficulties we are facing in this project and in planning for rare diseases organization and investments in the future is probably that we really don't know what is going to happen just a few years away from now. But that leaves us with the possibility to do what Robert Madeleine also suggested, that we should actually do our best to design what we want. So let's design a future for rare diseases, taking, of course, into account what we know about future trends as we develop them in the conversation we are having here today. And one of the trends, I think, is that we know that health and health provision by 2040 will be completely different from what we see today. So why not take stock of the fact that we know that technological innovation, the way we organize health, the use we do of information technologies will be so much different from what we do today that we can actually start by that and say, given that, we could perhaps see a future, a sustainable future for taking stock of technological advance and bringing it to people with rare diseases.
Thank you. I think we can have time for one more question, and then we'll have to go for coffee break.
Thank you very much for such a fruitful conversation. I guess it is. Yeah, okay. So belonging to the minority here from EU 13 countries, I just would like to express some accents. I really cherish those values, European values that we are sharing, all of us. However, when it comes to real actions, and actually in some countries more than in others, we have to talk about very concrete and legal and economic incentives, both positive and negative. And why just prime example of that, would we have European reference networks at all if we do not have Directive 2011? And looking to the future, will it be possible to do many things without calculation? How does it cost not to take action today? Just expression.
Any of you would like to comment or? Yes.
So I'll make one comment, and in a way, it sort of always makes a former European Commission official feel good to say this, but the really important questions always show you need more Europe. For example, on the artificial intelligence point, I was in the Parliament yesterday, and everybody agrees that it would be good for our trust in artificial intelligence if some of the abuses of it were criminalized. So you make a false copy of my driving license, you go to jail for 15 years. You make a false copy of my face and put it online as a deep fake, nothing happens. Why can't we criminalize it? But of course, MEPs know very well why they can't criminalize it, because the treaty says that's member states' business. And in the same way, I think in the space of abuses around health and failure to care around health policy, a lot of the problems arise from the fact that we don't have a political will to make a regulation that says this you have to do. And who knows? You know, ever since I was first appointed to the Health DG in 2004, people have been saying it's all going to be abolished. And we've gone through another phase of that under the Juncker Commission, and it hasn't been abolished. On the contrary, now the Health DG is co-writing the health programme to a degree that we didn't before in research and innovation. Can we continue to build on that? And I think that there are good signs. I think that the SDGs put health in a systemic vision, and now that vision is in every commissioner's key performance indicators for the next 5 years. The health budget will be co-written by health experts. So there are opportunities, but I think that fundamentally, that would be one of the out-of-area things that probably civil society organizations should do. Make it clear that you care more about effective solutions to problems than respecting the status quo in the treaties.
Just very quickly,
quick one.
very quickly, but I just can't resist that. I mean, it's the road to hell is paved by good intentions. I keep saying quotes, but with all the regulations, we need to, again, the law of unintended consequences. We need to be aware. Look what happened with GDPR over-interpretation. It could be a curse, and it's very difficult because you have an I would say armada of lawyers who want to make money out of it. And it hinders the cross-border research, it hinders registries and so on. And we need to really take a strong position on that, even just a stupid term such as what is a pseudonymized sample. And secondly, IVD directive. It will help a lot. It's clearly for the benefit of the industry. It will standardize things, but it runs a risk that from now on, from next year, it will wipe out completely, I would say, laboratory research in most of Europe, because all the laboratory developed tests, things which really push the field of rare diseases forward, developing tests for a single case, for ultra-rare disease, it can become illegal. So with these regulations, we need to bear in mind that it can backfire.
Last word from Terkel.
I absolutely agree, and I want to flag that in a few weeks or perhaps a month, Eurodis will come out with a data strategy on rare diseases. And based on a survey among patients with rare diseases, I think it will be quite a surprise to some that actually people see the benefits of not putting too strong barriers down to research on rare diseases, and to make sure that we can actually cooperate also across frontiers, across borders, on data exchange in a way where we protect the individual, but still making the best of the data we can collect through the work of the ELNs and in other settings.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure we could go on for a while, but I'm also confident that most of the very inspiring thoughts that have been laid out in this past hour will pop up again at one moment or another during various sessions later this morning and this afternoon. So let me thank you all for your participation, and above all, I would like to thank the three panelists. Please join me in thanking them for their contribution.
Thank you for the invitation.
I'd like you to go now. Emma?